All right, so I've had some requests to show you how I have everything set up. And so I'm going to go through three things right now. First, I'm going to go through how do I have stuff set up. Second, I'm going to go through how can I use this setup in Google Meet. The third thing is I'm going to use Zoom to show you an investigation and how it might look. Because one of the most powerful things we can do in virtual learning is to use these live sessions with students to actually be doing something that is important that they can't do asynchronously. So we want to make sure that our time that our students are taking to look at the screen and to be with us is really meaningful, and this is one way to do that. So first, the setup. So first of all, I have kind of a behind the scenes look here by using my phone, and it is connected into my into Zoom right now, okay? The second thing that I want to show you is my iPad. And so my iPad is set up in a way that is just using the things that I have around my apartment. So I have it connected to my computer through a cable, but you can see I've used a box, and I've used a wire hanger, and I've used a hair tie or like a headband. I've used some books, and I've used lots of different things to create this setup here. You might not have the exact same tools that I have, and that's okay. Just use what you have at home and make it your own. If you have kids at home, it's a great way to get them involved as well and have them create something. Give them some criteria, give them some constraints, and tell them to get building, and it'll be a lot of fun. So that's kind of my setup. I want to tell you about kind of the technical side of it. So I have it connected to my computer, and the reason why I have that is because I can use QuickTime to use my camera on my iPad to set up this document camera kind of setup. So I'm going to show you that because that's what's going to be important for Google Meet. So if you have a MacBook, you have QuickTime on your computer. So all you would do, and you should be able to see my screen right now, and you can see that I have the option to do a new movie recording, a new audio recording, and I'm doing a screen recording right now. So I would click on the new movie recording, and under the movie recording option, I have it set up already, but I'll go ahead and go through it. There's a little down arrow here that allows you to choose what camera you want to use for your setup. So you could either use the face camera that's on your computer, or you could use something that's connected externally. So for this, for example, I have my iPad set up. So I'm using my iPad's camera for this setup. You don't have to record it or anything unless you wanted to. All you would have to do if you were in Google Meet is present, and then when it tells you what you would like to present, you would just choose one window, and that window would be your QuickTime window, and then this would be what's presented to the kids. The only piece of advice I can give you is, or like really important piece of advice, is sometimes that gets glitchy. So I would test it out in a different meet, or sign into your meeting a little bit early, test it out, and if it doesn't work, then restart and do whatever you need to do to fix those glitches. So that's Google Meet. Now I'm going to use Zoom to actually do the investigation. So I like Zoom just honestly to use a background. This is my old classroom. So you could use a picture of your classroom and create a background, and it's just another way for your kids to kind of see like, oh, there's my desk or whatever. So it's kind of a nice way for them to see that. You can use other things like Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, whatever you'd like to do in order to, you just need an option to be able to share your screen. So I'm going to start recording Zoom right now, and then I'm going to also move into teacher mode. So I'm going to record that. And then what I mean with teacher mode is I did this investigation as like a guest scientist in a class of second graders. So they were looking at different processes that change the earth, and they had just watched a video of a different person creating this setup that they could create an investigation to make some observations about what types of things might help avoid erosion or prevent erosion. So they did, in that video, it was a guy named Jared, and he had it set up in a certain way, and he had soil in all of them, and then he also had other things in so that he had leaves in one of them and grass in the other. So I kind of prefaced this, they had some wonderings, and so I'm also addressing their wonderings, but I also modeled that I wanted to see how I could do the same experiment, but with the things around my neighborhood. So I went out and I found sand, and because some of the students were asking how this would look differently if there was different materials, and so I used sand. I had like some twigs and rocky kind of stuff, and then I have like these really smooth rocks. So now I'm going to move into teacher mode, and you guys will see this how I'm presenting it as a teacher. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So this is what I was saying, that I have the iPad via cable, or I have iPad via AirPlay. I want to do the iPad via cable just because it's a little bit trustier. So you should see both me and my setup here. All right, so this is for a grade 2 class. So remember, I'm going to be talking to them for the most part. I might stop and talk as I'm talking to a teacher as well. So the first thing that I want to say is, wow, you guys have a lot of wonderings, and I was really impressed with the things that you guys put on Seesaw, of how you were wondering about all these different things with the investigation that you showed. Some of you guys were wondering about what other things could avoid erosion, and some of you really wanted to wonder, or you were wondering about how did he set that up, and what other materials could we use? And so I want to take the time, and I was thinking about that too. You guys, your questions made me wonder too. So I actually went out to my neighborhood and I found some materials that you could use, or that I could use around my neighborhood. So one thing you might know that we have tons of is sand in Dubai. So that's one of the things that I went and got. So before we get started, I want to show you kind of how I want you to frame your thinking and what we're going to be doing. Okay. So the first thing is, how do I want you to frame your thinking? I want you to think about this in the lens of stability and change. What kind of system are we setting up that's stable? And then what am I doing to the system to cause it to change? Okay. And then what we're going to be doing today, so this is how I want you to be thinking about it. And this is what we'll be doing today, is we're going to be planning and carrying out an investigation. And you saw this investigation in a very similar way when you watched Mr. Jared do it. And I didn't have all the same things that Jared had, but I wanted to set up something that's very similar. So this is kind of what we're focusing on today. So we already said that sand is something that we have. And another question that you guys had is, how did he set that up? So I'm going to take some time really quickly and I also had that question, and I'm going to set up this. So if you can see in my bucket here, I have lots and lots of sand. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to put some sand into my bottle. And I just cut out, if you can see here, I cut out the side of the bottle here. And I'm just going to fill this up. And I'm not putting a specific amount just because I'm making some pretty simple observations. I'm just going to put enough in here to kind of make sure that there's enough to fill the bottom up here. I have a lot of twigs and stuff in here. I'm trying to avoid it. But out where I got this sand, it was very twiggy. So there's some twigs in my sand. Okay, so I made a little bit of a mess there, but that's okay. I can clean it up later. And then, so if you are looking here, you can see that I have sand in here. So to keep this consistent and really focusing on what's in my container, okay, so it's still, there's nothing moving in it right now. I'm going to label this by telling you that it has sand in this container, okay? And to save some time, I actually went ahead and filled my other 3 containers up, like so. And so we can see that these are all 3 the same, except there's different pieces of mystery things. But you can see in here, I set these up the same way. They're cut the same way, they have the same sand in it, everything. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here. Now, teachers, this is where maybe you wouldn't have this in the view here, but you might ask them, like, what other kind of things do you have around your neighborhood, or what do you think I have around my neighborhood that I might be able to add to the sand to help prevent erosion? So they might say rocks, they might say leaves or twigs or different things. So I have rocks. Some of the students said cacti, and I just had to say, well, I didn't have enough time to set up something where I had time to let something grow. So I just had to go with things that I could pick up. So I'm going to keep, just the way Mr. Jared did, I'm going to keep one of these with just sand. And then the other one, like you guys said, I'm going to put some twigs here. So I'm going to actually put it in this one over here. Just all this stuff. I found this under a tree, like around some bushes and under a tree. I just grabbed a bunch of it, and you can kind of see here. This is what it looks like up close. So this is one thing that I would think that you would need to be pretty mindful of whenever teachers, I'm kind of talking to in teacher mode right now, is real, like, you can see everything 3-dimensionally here because you're in front of it, but the kids can't. So anything you can provide to let them kind of see it, or even asking them questions like, what do you think this feels like? Or what do you think it smells like? And just to have them imagine them being here as much as possible. Okay, so now I have this in my container. So we're gonna, again, we have sand in this one, and then I'm gonna put twigs and rocks here. So you know that that's what's in that one. And then the other thing you guys said was rocks. So I got some rocks here. So these rocks look like this, these black ones. They're kind of all over Dubai. And so I found some. I'll replace them. I'll go put them back where I found them when I'm done. But I just wanted to borrow them for a little while. So I'm going to put these rocks in here. And I want to make sure all of the sand is covered, just like I did with the twigs and everything. Okay, and if you remember when Mr. Jared did this, he had them like hanging off of a table. And the one thing I wanted to kind of think about is that was a little bit different than Mr. Jared's is the way that he had it was just level. But when you guys read the book about La Conchita, you saw that La Conchita was a big hill. And so I wanted to kind of recreate that as well. And a lot of our sand dunes are sand hills as well. So I created something that was just a little bit at a hill. So I'm gonna, almost forgot to put that there. So I have my rocks and my sand. So you can see, remember, stability and change is the things that are the same in all three of these bottles is the sand. The things that are different are, there's rocks in this one, and then we have this kind of mixture here. And so I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I have set up here. And I just had to get creative because I don't have a lot of stuff in my apartment right now. And so I had to get creative and see what I had. So I had a cardboard box. So I might show this in front of the camera here. I have a cardboard box, and then I also have this framed thing that I found that was on my wall. So here's my box, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my containers up here. And I actually created it to where it would hold it like this. Because one of the problems I had when I first created my first setup is that my bottles were sliding off, and I needed to fix it. So the way that I fixed it is I created like this little front area. All right, and if you remember, erosion is when something moves from one area to another area. So this is kind of our hill, okay? We have a hill with just sand. We have a hill with sand and rocks, and then we have a hill with sand and like this twiggy kind of debris area here, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I need something to catch because we're gonna do just like what Jared did, and we're gonna put some water in here, okay? So here we go. So I need cups to go underneath. Just like that, okay? And then teachers, the reason why I have the white index cards under here is because I figured that seeing the sand on a brown box might not be super easy. All right, and then one thing that the teacher that I was working with was really good about is when I needed some time to readjust, she just stepped in and asked some questions and asked them what they were wondering about, which was great. And then I like to try to make it as visible as possible that I'm gonna pour some water into here. And I'm gonna keep pouring water, and the first one I'm gonna pour into is the one that's just sand. So I'm gonna pour into this one first. So I'm gonna keep pouring until the cup at the bottom is full. So as you guys are doing, looking at this, I want you to just write down in the chat what you guys are noticing. Okay, so my cup is almost full. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. And you can kind of see there. And then what I might do is, now that it's done dripping, I can kind of bring it up to the screen here for the students to see. Like the line, the light line there is where the sand has settled to the bottom, and the rest is the water on top. So what I might do for the students here, just to help them see that a little bit better, is I might draw a line across to show that's where the sand level is. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same thing with the rocks. And again, as you're watching, I want you to just write down your observations into the chat there. The good thing about using sand for this is that it settles to the bottom pretty quickly. So you don't really, there's not a lot of waiting. And then one thing that we noticed with the kids is that they were really focused on how clean or how dirty the water was. And so we wanted to make sure that we're focused on, our goal is not to have clean water. Our goal is to make sure that the sand doesn't move from the hill to the valley below. A little bit more. Okay, so you can see my line on this one is drawn kind of up there. So if you look at this other container here, you can see where that would be, right? And so I need to draw a line on there, and you can see there's a tiny bit of a layer of sand on the bottom there. So if I were to make some observations, and I could ask my students, which one would you rather have to prevent erosion? sand by itself or sand with some rocks on the top. And then the third one here, I'm gonna do the same thing again. Again, being mindful that I'm pouring the water into here where the camera can see it. And I'm gonna start pouring into here, okay? And again, go ahead and make your observations into the chat while we watch this part. Okay, so if I'm looking at that again and I'm looking at where a line would be, where this is settling down, I'm not sure I could actually draw one. There's a little bit in the bottom there. If you can see, there's a little bit, but not a ton. So if I were to draw a line, I might draw it at the very bottom where the glass, kind of the bottom of the glass ends, right there. So here we're kind of, again, the whole purpose of this experiment was to duplicate what the students had seen in the past. And you can see what that looks like. Sorry, I have some stuff in the way here. And so you can see this is the way it's set up. And so the kids could ask questions. They were the ones that actually came up with the rocks and the twigs and stuff, like I said. And then what I did, I'm going to just kind of step out of the frame here. What I did when I presented this in a different class, or in a grade 2 class, is I actually moved my camera to be down here while we talked the rest of the time so that they could see the 3 glasses at a more eye level setup, like so. And that was it. And then, like I said, this is how it's set up. It works pretty well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what kind of investigations you guys do.